Welcome back to yet another video. Today we're going to talk bebop. Many people don't really know what the term bebop actually means. So let's quickly go over the history, what defines the style, especially when it comes to improvisation techniques and how you can use them in your own playing. In this video, I'm going to show you some practical examples of how to practice bebop techniques and get them into your playing, especially using enclosures and how they interact with chord tones specifically. These are foundational concepts in jazz that will immediately make your solos much more interesting, expressive, and authentic. Also, I've got a free PDF for you in the description, how to instantly improve your solos in 5 simple ways. It goes over soloing techniques and more on some of these bebop ideas like using scales, arpeggios, and enclosures. You can grab it for free in the description below. So, the name bebop came from scat singing, where early jazz musicians like Dizzy Gillespie would imitate the music's rhythmic feel using sounds like be and bop. These phrases mimicked the sharp, offbeat accents of the music and eventually became the name of the style itself. Musically, bebop evolved out of swing in the swing era, but it took things to a whole new level. Faster tempos, more complex harmonies and chord progressions, a heavy focus on chromaticism, and a new emphasis on individual improv and virtuosity. You also saw the blues get pulled back into the spotlight, but now infused with this new modern sound. The blues form was updated with 2/5s and 2/5-1 progressions layered into the old 1/4-5 progression of the blues. The blend of bebop and blues became the foundation of the modern jazz language. So where did this shift come from? It was driven by musicians who were bored with the rigid swing era arrangements where they didn't allow improvisation. Big bands were tightly arranged and didn't leave much room for personal expression, so after the gigs, players would meet in after-hours clubs in Harlem, New York, places like Minton's Playhouse, and form the small combos that we know of today to push the boundaries. This is where the modern jazz quartet and quintet were born, and with them a whole new piano style. One of the defining characteristics of bebop is its phrasing on offbeats. Drummers would use heavy accents on unexpected beats, what became known as dropping bombs. And improvisers used chromaticism and enclosures to weave lines that went around chord tones and in sophisticated ways. This wasn't just playing scales. It was creative, deliberate, and expressive. Two of the biggest pioneers of the bebop piano style were Thelonious Monk and Bud Powell. Bud in particular is a massive influence for me. He's probably my #1 influence, and he influenced almost every great jazz pianist who came after him. Bill Evans, Wynton Kelly, Chick Corea, Horace Silver, McCoy Tyner, Barry Harris, the list goes on. Of course, you can't talk about bebop without mentioning the horn giants like Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, and Sonny Stitt, who helped define the sound of bebop and the vocabulary we still use today. So why does this matter to you as a jazz player? Because it's so critically important if you want to become a fluent jazz improviser, and bebop is considered to be the standard practice of jazz. If you learn to play bebop effectively, you'll have much more interesting and complex sounding solos. It will teach you to be able to solo over pretty much anything you ever come across, and in very interesting ways. And it goes very well with blues playing. It's a critical part of any jazz musician's soloing vocabulary. Bebop is absolutely essential if you want to become a strong and confident improviser. And after the blues, bebop and Parker tunes is Jazz 101. If you were to learn 10 Charlie Parker tunes, be able to play over them competently and transcribe some of the phrases from his solos, you'll have a much better understanding of jazz in general. This style makes frequent use of chromaticism and enclosures, which are a jazz musician's secret weapon. If you're not familiar with what an enclosure is, I'll be going over some and demonstrating them in just a bit. Bebop soloing outlines chord tones, surrounds them with chromatic notes around those chord tones, and this creates more interesting contour in your lines and gives that distinct jazz sound. Add good rhythm, swing feel, and some offbeat phrasing, and suddenly your solos start sounding like real jazz. For us pianists, this also means going back to some of the left-hand techniques of the time. During the bebop era, rootless left-hand voicings had not been invented yet, so you'll often hear players like Bud Powell and Monk using root position shell voicings, which are root and 7th, root and 3rd, and even root and 10th voicings. If you have the hand size to reach them, you can play root and 10ths, which help a lot. These voicings give the harmony just enough clarity while leaving space for the right hand lines to really shine, and is a trademark sound to the unique style of bebop. What's great is these are foundational voicings that any jazz pianist should be familiar with, and you can use them in your solo piano playing, as well as form the foundation for all good jazz voicings. Alright, now that you understand what bebop is and why it matters, let's talk about how you can actually practice it, start using it in your playing. Let's dive right in. Okay, first I'm going to talk about the left hand And I'm just going to be going over just a few chord types of a 2-5-1. So we're going to talk about a major, minor, and dominant 7 chord. So root 7, I'm going to start with a G minor 7 chord. So that would be. Now you can play root and third, but generally it's going to sound a little more robust and fuller if you play root and 7. You got some nice spacing. I'm just going to go over a 2-5-1 and the ways you can play it in your left hand using root 7s and root thirds. So here's the first way. Now if you can reach this 10th C to E here, this 10th, if you have the hand size and the span to reach it, it will sound good. And you can also do a tritone substitute like this. And sometimes I will go to the 6th and play around with that, or the other way you can do it is starting root third and then root 7. So that would be this. You can do it. It sounds a little thin. If you can go to the 10th or start with the 10th, you can do that. You can also do root third 7 in this area of the piano. Like so, or I recommend you also try different rhythms, like the Charleston or the and of 2 and of 4. Things like that. And now let's talk about the right hand. I'm going to start with just a major triad, an F major triad, and talk about the importance of chord tones and how to outline them and how to target them when you start a phrase or you end a phrase. So let's say an F major triad. We have the root, the third, the fifth, and in jazz, the 7 and the 9th. But generally, your strong chord tones are the root, third, fifth, and then the 7th isn't quite as strong, but it's a nice color note. You can use it. The third is the strongest chord tone. The 5th is the second strongest chord tone. So even if you know that, the key is targeting them. You can start your phrase on a chord tone. You can get to the next chord tone of the next chord and get to the following chord tone of that next chord. So we're going to do it over a 2-5-1, of course, but I'm first going to just show you an F major 7 chord, even just an F triad. So normally the chord tones would be this. Right? Root, third, fifth, root. The bebop way to play those chord tones and go like this would be to use some chromaticism and enclosures around each chord tone. Now enclosures are just a chromatic note above, below, and the target note. There's different combinations. You can do 2 above, 1 below, 2 above, 2 below. There's all kinds of permutations. The bebop way would be more like this. So you can do a lot of different combinations of getting to the chord tones. I suggest you start with this, just doing 1 above, 1 below, target note. So the first thing you want to know is the diatonic approach. That's using just notes within the F major scale, not using any chromatic notes. So that would be this. Here's your diatonic enclosures. Now, of course, you can do the 7th. Now let's add some chromaticism. This is what gives bebop its unique sound and flavor. I'm going to approach each of those chord tones chromatically, 1 above, 1 below, target note. If you did the 7th, okay, so notice some of them sound a little better than others, or at least I think so. And generally, if you do 2 above, 1 below, that usually sounds pretty good. That's a pretty common enclosure pattern that sounds like this. Now on the third, the A, notice it's all chromatic. This one I like to approach in a slightly different way. I go below, then above, and then a chromatic approach like this. Now in bebop playing, a lot of this is going to come from arpeggios. And arpeggios are powerful because they quickly outline the chord tones. And you can approach them in a more straight up way like this. So there I did a chromatic approach, 3, 5, 7, 9. You can do an enclosure, for example. Okay, so if you do a 2-5-1, first thing is I would practice 1 above, 1 below target note, or 2 above, 1 below target note to outline the first, third, and fifth, or seventh of your seventh chords on a 2-5-1. So for G minor, let's do 2 above, 1 below. Right, so this is a really nice enclosure pattern exercise. And from there, you can try arpeggiating or just doing a quick approach tone, a half step below or above, and arpeggiating the seventh chord. Or you can try 1 above, 1 below target. How about 2 above, 1 below? Okay, so from here, if we're doing a 2-5-1, let's say I enclose every third of every chord. That will sound pretty good. So for G minor 7, that's going to be the B flat. For the C7, that's going to be E natural. And then for the F major 7, the A natural. With bebop playing, it's a combination of enclosing chord tones, using arpeggio to outline our chord tones, and using maybe some scale and enclosures to get to the next chord tones. So let's say I did an enclosure of the thirds, and I'm going to outline the arpeggio, and then I'm going to use some scale to come down to get to the third of C. Let's say I go down. So I did a 2 above, 1 below enclosure, and then chromaticism down. So I'm doing pretty much the same thing, 2 above, 1 below, just getting to the C. Now let's do a chromatic approach just to the root instead of the third. That was just 1 above, 1 below. That was 2 below. Now if I want to get to the F major, I can go down to the fifth of F, which is C. I can go up to the root or enclose the root. Now if I'm on the root again, I can arpeggiate or so that was 1 below, 2 above. So once you start getting more familiar with that, you can start to combine scale with arpeggio and arpeggio with scale. And I'd recommend really starting with all the thirds. Let's say we do on a dominant chord. Let's do a C7 or a C9. Now, when you arpeggiate, you can just do 3, 5, 7, 9. Or you can do 3, 5, 7, flat 9. So I went down to the third again. So I'd first recommend practicing over one individual chord type and then start to connect them. And notice how your shell movement, your thirds and sevens, resolve down. So if I'm on flat 7 of C7, that's a half step away from the third of F major. Or I could go up to the fifth. And of course, you can descend with your arpeggio. So one more example here is I'm going to enclose the third again of every chord. And then I'm going to use more scale to get to the other chord tones. Now when you land on the third, it's really strong. And I could go. Right, you can do enclosures like forever if you wanted to, but it's a nice way to extend your lines. But I'm really just kind of going into the next seventh chord shape, and I'm enclosing more chord tones. So I'd recommend you start with, again, one above, one below. You can do two above, two below, two above, one below, target note. That one always sounds good. And eventually you'll develop your own preferences in the ones that you really like. There's much more, but this should give you a solid thing to practice and work on that can apply to tons of different situations in your jazz playing. All right, so there you have it. There's your bebop crash course. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. Tell me what stood out to you. Check out the free guides in the description below. There's a guide on how to instantly improve your solos in 5 ways, where to start if you're new to jazz piano or coming from a classical background, a guide on how to organize and structure your practice if you're feeling lost or overwhelmed, and my modes cheat sheet, which goes over all the modes of major and melodic minor. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.